It is the season to be thankful, and I'm thankful that we're almost out of the slow season of baseball as we head towards the winter meetings. Some free agencies signings are underway, and the awards have been given out. It's a slow week, but it's a good week this week in baseball. I think this is always the toughest part of the year if you're a baseball fan, because you really feel it if you were in a playoff team, because it's like the season ends and there was already nothing about your team, but now there's nothing about any team right now.
Turkey and baseball don't go together.
No.
Right? You never go to a ballpark, right? And they don't offer turkey sandwiches
Hot
at
dogs.
the ballpark. Hot dogs, yes. Turkey, no. So Thanksgiving and baseball, I know I can't connect the two things other than I'm very thankful for baseball because it sustains me all year long.
Correct. And we obviously had a bunch of news. The awards were all given out.
We talked about those.
We talked about those. I think for the most part, they went to who we thought they were going to. I think it's just interesting. We're starting to see some of the qualifying offers go out, who was rejected, who was non-tendered. Only 4 people actually ended up taking their qualifying offer, which kind of surprised me that it was such a low number of guys.
And the guys that took them were probably, how can I say, smart to take them. When you think about Shota Imanaga of the Cubs, he was getting, the offer is $22 million for the qualifying offer. He wasn't probably going to get that on a new contract on the open market for his future. So just take the 22 now. Hope you pitch your butt off this year, and then maybe you can get another good
Woodruff
contract.
Coming back from injury knows whatever he was going to get this year, he was going to be taking. It's a prove-it deal either way, so you take the prove-it deal that's going to make you the most money.
That's a pitcher I like a lot, and David Stearns, Pete Pobo with the Mets, obviously knows him well. And it was a part of me going, I wish they could maybe bring in Woodruff, but A, he's not a Met. B, he gets injured a lot, and the Mets have a lot of those guys. So.
And C, he was never coming here because he signed the qualifying offer, which means he was never available to us in the first place.
Trent Grisham and his 34 home runs went back to the Yankees. Smart for him.
Are the Yankees happy if they get half of his total next season? If he gets 17 home runs, are they happy with him?
Here's what I would say: if he played better defense, because when he came to the Yankees, he was a defense-first player and a guy who could maybe hit a little, and he outperformed everybody's expectations, probably including his own this year, offensively. But defensively, he was not a positive player. He was slightly below average, which really surprised me because I thought that was his specialty. And Gleyber Torres is going to go back to Detroit and play, and he had an excellent year for them this year. So.
I think it's good. Those, and then obviously all the big name guys didn't accept it. Schwarber ain't taking a QO this offseason. Kyle Tucker ain't taking one either.
Right. This is the romancing season for these
guys.
Right. So Schwarber, like you said, Tucker, Suarez, Framber Valdez, Bo Bichette, Dylan Cease, Edwin Diaz, Zach Gallen, Michael King, and Pete Alonso didn't take a qualifying offer because he had one last year, but he is not. So right now it's romancing the players, right? They all bring them in, they buy them dinner, they tell them how much they're going to love them.
And what I think is interesting is this is an off season where you're not only whining and dining these guys that are from major league free agents, but this year you've got 4 guys coming in from the NBP that people are expecting things from, and you've got 2 position players and 2 pitchers, because you've got the position players in Munetaka Murakami and Kazuma Okamoto, and then you've got Tatsuya Imai and Kona Takahashi,
2
who
pitchers,
are all people are expecting things from these guys. I think Okadamo is more of a known quantity. I think he's coming over. He's 30, so you kind of know what you're getting hit with him. But Murakami is 25, and he swings and misses a lot, but he hits some absolute bombs.
And the Mets have been linked to him as a possible guy at the corner if they don't bring back Pete Alonso. And I think we know now about Japanese players in general that there are going to be more of them coming because they're handling it. Obviously, I'm not talking about Shohei's a wrong guy to try to compare everything to.
I think Shohei, when you look at Japanese players coming over, you almost have to remove Shohei because he's an outlier. You have to look at the other guys. Yamamoto, he's adjusted. He's looked unbelievable. Sasaki, it took a little while, but at least he seemed to find something.
I think has been a solid major league pro.
Right. Senga had an unbelievable start, but injuries have sort of derailed him.
Imanaga had a good season,
right?
And then he kind of fell off a little bit this year.
I'm blanking on the name of the guy that's up in Boston.
Yoshida.
Yes, I don't know how good he's been for them.
Not as good as they hoped he would be when they paid him all that
The
money.
fact that I'm saying that probably speaks to that he's not been
I think we have an expectation now that these guys are not only going to be decent Major League players, they're going to be actually good Major League players.
Right. And so what are these guys going to be, and where are teams going to value them in relation to guys like Schwarber and Kyle Tucker and Ranger Suarez? Like, you've got big name players available, and then you've got these guys that, it's like Murakami's 25. He might be able to hit 30, 40 home runs like some of these other guys, like your Pete Alonso at first base, but he's like almost 5 or 6 years younger than him.
Yeah, and he won't cost you what Pete's going to cost you.
Exactly. So, but there's the fear of you don't necessarily know, will it translate?
Yeah, and Alonso did come, I guess, through his agent Scott Boras, say that I think Boras said that he is willing to DH, for some of the time. He doesn't want to be an exclusive DH, and I think that was sort of a bouquet thrown at not only the Mets but any other team, because if you were going to have to sign that guy as a first baseman, I'm only going to play first base and all that kind of stuff, I don't know.
And it's interesting.
Everybody's going to want to do that.
It's especially telling that announcement came out even after Josh Naylor has now signed with the Seattle Mariners long terms, because that was one of Pete's biggest points of competition.
It's a guy I wanted.
Right. And now he's off the market, so Pete is really the big name left at first base for a team to make a move there. So him acknowledging sort of his own flaws and limits as a player going forward certainly is going to open him up a lot more to top teams being interested in him.
And we were talking about before we got on air, you were mentioning about does a player like Luis Arias, does he fit the Blue Jay mold of contact and high ability to get a hit when you need it?
I think just sort of in general, like when you're looking at this offseason, the Blue Jays and the Brewers, because you have to put them up there, even though they had that terrible series against the Dodgers, though I think in part that
a lot of teams
does work as an argument against this. But you saw that teams that had offenses that were built around high contact guys that could put the ball in play did relatively well this year. Luis Arias is a first baseman, at least by offensive metrics. Generally, he's not particularly well liked. He doesn't hit for power. He's
actually a plus defensive player.
Right. He was a terrible offensive guy last season, but he fits the mold of a guy that's going to put the bat on the ball and put pressure on the defense. So our team, is there going to be some team out there that goes, you know what? We're going to buck trend and say what we need, and maybe for the right team, that's what they need. They're like, we don't need a guy that's going to hit 30 home runs at first base. We need a guy in this lineup that's going to put the ball in play and be a consistent pesky bat low in our lineup.
I think you would agree with me, though, that Luis Arias ain't no John Olerud.
No.
Right. So the point is that for me, as an old guy, right, my corners, I want power from them. That's not just me, but really at first base from a guy who just has no speed, right? So which you don't get out of first base, and no power.
It would be different if Arias hit 40 doubles a season.
Yeah, I don't know if he hits 20.
But exactly, I'm saying 20, if he hit 10 home runs in a season, but he was the type of guy where he hits a zillion doubles, I'm like, okay, I can live with that, because he's still going to have a slugging that's relatively high because he's hitting all these doubles all over the place, and he's still keeping the bases moving. He's getting extra base hits. He's just not a guy that's going to hit you a ton of home runs. I can live with that. I can't hit a guy that doesn't hit any doubles and any home runs.
Or he has to contribute in many different ways. You remember? I don't know if you remember Doug Mankiewicz.
Yeah.
Right? So he was a guy who didn't really.
But he was an unbelievable defensive
first baseman. Good bat when he needed. Really helped the Red Sox win that World Series. And that's a rarity, though. Those
right. If Arias also had the speed to steal 30 bases and play great defense, now it's like, okay, maybe you can change what a first baseman is normally thought of.
Doesn't.
But he's not doing that. He's really a one-tool player.
So another guy who is thought to, and this happens a lot now, is Cody Ponce pitched in the KBO last year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this thing about the KBO where you're broken, you leave Major League Baseball, you go over there, and somehow it's happened to Eric Fetty. It's happened to a few of these guys. They come back and they find something when they're over there, and they bring it back. All of a sudden, they're like, "Wow, this guy's good now. He wasn't that good before."
Mm-hmm. There might be some guys that just they're right on the line between AAA and the majors, and sitting in AAA, they're never quite good enough to figure out what's wrong when they try to come up to the major leagues. But when you go to the KBO, which is...
They don't care if they win or lose in the KBO?
Well, no. The KBO is better than what's ever in the AAA, but it's not quite as good as what's in the major leagues. So now the guy that could dominate AAA but couldn't figure it out in the majors gets to the level where he's like, oh, okay, that's what I need to do to be successful consistently.
And I think also in both NPB, right, in Japan and in Korea, that, it used to be that these were like, I don't call them junk ball leagues, but they were curveball, sort of more oriented. They were
not anymore.
Speed. Right. Both of those leagues have a lot of fastball pitchers, and they have the curveballs as well. So now it's so much closer to Major League Baseball,
and that's why when guys are coming over, there's not an adjustment period as much, because it's not like all you're really doing is being like, oh, okay, every team's pitchers were like the best pitchers I was facing, pretty much. That, like, you're used to see. It's not like, oh, not every pitcher I face is like the best guy I ever saw. It's just like, okay, yeah, he's like the better pitchers on each team, pretty much.
Cody Ponce is a guy that is like getting some looks right now because apparently he had great success, and like, who the heck is Cody Ponce?
Right. But we saw it work for Fetty for a season, and then it didn't quite work as well.
It's not the kind of thing that necessarily is sustained. Like all of a sudden he found the miracle in Korea,
and now he's better forever.
Not that way. Our favorite team, or not, the Atlanta Braves, they did bring back Raciel Iglesias as their closer, and I guess I'm unhappy as a Met fan because he's really good, and I thought, well, maybe they won't have a closer, and they'll blow.
The Braves are going to go to the season without a closer. Okay.
And they also made a move, trading their shortstop, who was a Gold Glove contender in Nick Allen, and he got traded to the Astros for Maurice Dubon, who's a utility Gold Glove player. So that's kind of an interesting swap, and it makes me think that the Braves may want Bichette.
That's what I was saying.
To play shortstop there.
Right, they've needed a shortstop for a long time. They're a team that typically doesn't go out and put big money on free agents, but given the struggles they've had the last few off seasons and sort of the general malaise that seemed to kind of settle into that fan base, where just nobody's been happy with where they've been since the World Series, really.
Well, it's a high bar.
It's a hard, but it's like they felt, they had that unbelievable regular season just to go into the playoffs and get bounced by the Mets, and they've really never felt that.
Well, some of it's obviously, a lot of it's pitcher injuries, which I assume the Braves are saying, okay, everybody should be okay, good to go.
Right, let's give them a lineup where if at this point this year, if we go out and we get Bo Bichette and you pitchers still can't get it done, we have to move on.
Well, if they're only from injury, though, because when you're going with the guys we talked about in our last podcast, right? Sale and
but you knew this was always a thing with Sale. You can't be like, oh, we got multiple healthy seasons out of him. So the idea that somehow now the Chris Sale injury is like something you could ill afford. It's like, okay, you were always borrowing from Peter to pay Paul with that guy. A healthy season from him in 2024 and 2025 probably means there's some time missing coming in the next few seasons.
And you said, the Braves weren't going to sit on their hands. Alex Anthopoulos has never been a guy to do that. And so you had to expect that they were going to, I'm just really worried about that team, as I always am.
But they've had some addition by subtraction because Alex Manoah apparently showed up on the Braves at some point last season. And now they've non-tendered him. I don't think he's going to be able to find a team going.
I remember Alex Manoah when he was pitching in the All-Star game. They had him mic'd up, in the All-Star game, and I thought, wow, how distracting, by the way, to be mic'd up and be talking when you're pitching. But he did it because that's the All-Star game, and I thought, wow, that was like the pinnacle of his powers. And then he forgot how to pitch. He got injured,
and then the pitch clock came in, and he's never been the same.
To watch a guy fall that far that fast, just really, it was surprising. Other signings, and you'll remember this guy, and I had a thought about him. So Phil Maton, who was briefly a Met in 2024, he signed with the Cubs for 2 years. And if you look at Maton's advanced stats, they're really good.
Right.
Really, he's got a whip of 1, and, his ERA is low.
Relievers, though, are really volatile. You could have a season like that and then be terrible the next season.
Here's what I remember about Phil Maton. When the Mets needed him the most in the playoffs, he gave it up.
Yeah.
And so I as a Met fan, I wouldn't trust that guy because of what happened in the biggest situations.
Right. But that's such a
somebody help you.
The problem is that's such a bad way to evaluate players.
But I just it's fine as long as he doesn't have to pitch in the playoffs. We'll be good.
Well, you know what? If you're the Mets, that means you made the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, right now they could use that at this point. So, and let's see, other guys that were re-signed.
Nothing that's going to really move the needles for a lot of teams. McCann re-signed with Arizona.
James McCann, right?
Jake Bauers signed in Milwaukee. Jonathan India re-signed with the Royals. And Tyrone Taylor re-signed with the Mets. I think for all of those teams, really, I think India is the only guy of those four that there's going to be huge any kind of expectation.
I think the India also would have been, they traded Brady Singer for him, so to let him go would have,
Right, they're going to at least try and bring him back and pray he can rediscover, being a good baseball player next season.
But how about the non-tender guys? You were talking about this.
I mean, look at Texas. They showed no mercy to their World Series heroes, getting rid of Adolis Garcia and Jonah Heim.
Jonah Heim was good. Like what happened to have him just fall out of favor so much?
But he wasn't good.
Yeah, apparently it wasn't good last year.
Well, Adolis Garcia had that monstrous April, I think 2 years ago, and pretty much since then he's been one of the worst hitters in baseball.
I mean, he was a big contract guy too.
Right. But I mean, all of these guys, when you look up and down this list of non-tendered guys, I mean, J.J. Bleday, Jake Fraley, M.J. Melendez, Alex Manoah, Mike Tauchman, Mark Leiter Jr., none of these guys were putting together, Michael Toglia.
I thought Nathaniel Lowe being non-tendered by Boston. Now that they have a lot of first base when you think about the fact that
with Cassis coming back, there's no need for him.
But he's a guy, as a team that might be looking for a first baseman, I would kind of go, well, I wouldn't be my number one choice.
Right. But how many teams are really being like, oh, well, we need to make sure we tighten up our backup first baseman position.
Right. Well, and that would be
right. That's what he is.
Probably for the Mets, he'd probably be the starting first baseman.
Right. But they're not going to go sign him to be their starter, so he's kind of stuck on the sidelines until everybody else is done with their actual free agent moves and needs to move on to the tinkering stage of their offseason.
Yeah, we're not there yet, and like you said, you've got a couple of
you've got some
things to happen in the next 30 days, and it seems like the real free agent season gets going with the beginning of the winter meetings next month, beginning of next month. So yeah,
I mean, there were a couple of little trades this week. You had Joey Waymar going to the Giants from the Marlins for cash. I mean, he's never really done much in the major leagues, but it's just
he had 236 with 3 homers.
Woo! and the Twins and the Orioles exchanged some minor league players, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of movement in the offseason, like we said, until we get to the winter meetings. Naylor re-signing this early was unusual.
Yeah. So a writer I like a lot, and both for baseball and for not is Will Leach. And he wrote in MLB.com. I posed an interesting question last week, and that was, all right, so we expect the MVP race in 2026 to be between Aaron Judge and Cal Raleigh, I guess, you want to include him, and Shohei Ohtani. So the question is, who are the other guys that might unseat him? And he put his 10 guys out there. In the American League, he put Nick Kurtz. Well, he put Raleigh as one of the guys because he didn't win it this year. Jose Ramirez, Julio Rodriguez,
right,
and Bobby Witt Jr. And that's not really going, too far.
That's not really going too. I think of those 4 guys, or of those 5 guys, Julio Rodriguez is the guy that kind of stands out to me as the least likely guy to do it, just because he's never really statistically put up a season where if you looked at it going like, okay, well, in a different season, that would win MVP. Where all of those other guys have put together, with the exception of Kurtz, but Raleigh, Ramirez, and Bobby Witt Jr. have all had seasons where you go, well, in a different season, that guy's winning an MVP.
All right, so give me one guy in the American League that's not on this list who you would throw out there. It doesn't, I have a thought popped in my head going, it would. I think
if Bo Bichette resigns in Toronto, he could win an MVP.
Wow, that's good. I'm going to pick a guy who had a really good year in 2024 and didn't have a really good year this year. Plays for a team that really needs him to have a good year. Plays a premium position in Gunnar Henderson.
Another guy Gunnar Henderson could definitely win an MVP. I think Jordan could win an MVP.
Yeah,
he just had to play a full season.
and mash the whole time, right? Because when you're DH, I think unless you're Ohtani, it's really hard to carry that.
And NL, he named Corbin Carroll, he named Juan Soto, he named Paul Skeens. Skeens is tough because it's just so hard to win it as a pitcher.
It happens, but
Fernando Tatis. The one I disagree with that he put on here is Ellie De La Cruz.
Well,
I don't see, he would have like
the Reds are going to take the next step. That's kind of what would have to happen,
right? But when I look at his player profile, his career profile for what he's put together in any given season, I'm like, okay, well, wait a second. He has to see massive growth in like multiple areas offensively for me to think of him as MVP candidate. Because right now he's pretty much a minus defender and he can steal bases.
Yeah, minus defender. Remember when he was, thought of as...
He's not a great defensive shortstop. He's a good base stealer. He hit 20 home runs, but he hit for a terrible average last season. So it's like, okay, that means all of a sudden he has to go from hitting 20 home runs to hitting 30 home runs. That's a big jump. He's hitting 50% more homers next season. He has to go from hitting
out a ton.
230 to like probably hitting close to 300 or above if you're going to consider him for an MVP. Like, okay, wait a second. I'm predicting a 10 home run increase and like a 60, 70 point batting increase for this guy. And he has to suddenly start playing good defense. It's like, okay, that's too many things for me to put him in MVP discussion. At least all the other guys, I can kind of see it.
The thing that surprised me was that Juan Soto has, I guess I know this, but right, he's been playing 9 years, excellent years, and he's never won an MVP. And is he going to be one of those guys? I mean, because Shohei's still in town, so...
He all it takes is a year where Shohei gets hurt for him to win an MVP, though.
Well, he's had Judge in the other league.
Well, he's also the guy that's hurt by the existence of Judge and Ohtani, because Soto just sort of does his thing every year, and then, like, if you look at his sum total in all of those years, he actually sometimes ends up grading better out than these other guys, but they have these crazy peaks where he loses out to them. And it's also, he's playing at the time of, like, there's 3 generational baseball players playing right now. Juan Soto can't be held at fault because he's one of the 3.
So it brings me to a question I don't have the answer to, but I'll think about that. Who is the best player in the Hall of Fame to have never won an MVP? So that's a question, right? And think about, like, oh yeah,
we'll definitely be answering that next week.
So that's pretty significant. And and you mentioned one other thing we were talking about, which was how many teams had nobody hit more than 20 home runs in the major leagues?
More than 30.
More than 30.
Yeah, there were 12 teams last year that had their home run leader had less than 30 home runs on the team. And
12
of them.
Out of 30.
4 of them made the playoffs.
That's 40%, folks.
Right. 4 of those. So 33% of the teams that didn't have a 30 home run hitter made the playoffs. That included the Brewers, the Padres, the Boston Red Sox, and the Cincinnati Reds, who made the playoffs with their home run leader having 22, and that being Ellie De La Cruz. Yeah. The Baltimore Orioles took it a level even further, not having a guy that hit 20 on their roster. Jordan Westburg and a couple others led the team with 17.
Yeah. And so, does it signal that Major League Baseball is starting to head away from the long ball at all costs? I don't know if that's the case.
8 of the 18 teams that did make the 8 of the 18 teams that did have a 30 home run player on their roster, they made the playoffs. So just looking at that, generally having a 30 home run hitter on your roster is more conducive to making the playoffs than not.
And then when you get to the playoffs, as we saw, it can go both ways, right? I made the comment about the Milwaukee Brewers, who played small ball all season and killed people that they scored among the most runs in baseball, not having home runs. A guy hit 30 home runs. Mm-hmm. And then they got to the playoffs, and then as we said, the Dodgers kind of shut them down. They didn't have any big boppers, right? It's harder in the playoffs to develop rallies because it's hard to get a lot of hits off a good pitcher. Whereas the Blue Jays, they were kind of a power team during the regular season, but they also were a contact team, and they relied more on the contact.
And they were 2 outs. They were like a play or 2 away from winning the World Series. But I think that the playoffs becomes a lot more about lineup depth overall. Whether or not that lineup depth is hitting home runs like the Dodgers was, or that lineup depth was getting hits like the Blue Jays was. Having a lineup 1 to 9 that is giving good, consistent at bats in the playoffs is the difference, and that was the undoing of a lot of teams in the regular season, like the Mets.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Because you want to get down to the point in the order where you can maybe bring in a guy or leave a guy in to, a second time, going, okay, well, 7, 8, 9 aren't as good as their 1, 2, 3, 4, and particularly in a top heavy team, that'll be the case. And then you get to the playoffs, all of a sudden, man, that 8 hitter is a real pain in the neck.
Right. And even if they're not getting hits, they're given good at bats, and they're not giving up easy outs. That just makes such a difference because it makes the starting pitcher work so much more.
So you have to create a roster to make the playoffs, obviously, and you have to do the things you do that. But then at the same time, you're remaking your roster as the season goes along to make sure that once you get to the playoffs, that you have the lineup that's not going to make you vulnerable to pitching. And so you're kind of fooling around with stuff as you get
because you end up with a lineup like the Phillies, which was ultimately a lineup you could kind of pitch around.
Which is hard to believe when you think about how good an offensive team that is.
Right, but in the playoffs, because it's just like, okay, well, if we don't let Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper kill us, Nobody else is going to, so we just don't let them kill us.
And that is exactly what happened. So, and I'm sure Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies are keenly aware that, they probably need to, I think they're going to bring the band back, but they need to tweak a little bit and have a little bit, a little bit of mojo difference.
I hate the evil that I'm about to speak in the world here, but I am sure Philadelphia Philly fans would love to see Kyle Tucker in right field as an upgrade over Nick Castellanos.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh man, that would fit amazingly well. They're like, oh, our defense just got way better, and our offense just got way better. This is great.
I think Kyle Tucker would fit in a lot of places.
Yeah,
so I think
except New York. I don't know if he works in New York. Interestingly,
I don't know if he's a New York guy or one of
in the New York mid outfield, you're gonna play him in center.
Yeah, no,
right.
That's a problem.
Yeah, you're no Kyle Tucker coming here.
Tyrone Taylor's a problem too.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have that long term. So, all right. Well, here's a This Week in Baseball, and happy Thanksgiving. Hey. We wish you and your families the best, and we'll have another podcast for you next Monday.